Hello, 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 and welcome to my YouTube channel. I forgot my microphone. The name of this channel is Manifesting Magic the Practical Way. Let's see. Oh, it's not going to be right, but it's all good. I like one take, so I don't like to keep doing things. Um, mm, there we That'll do. That'll do. Manifesting Magic the Practical Way, because I do think there's some very practical ways of seeing that magic you want to happen in your life. Um, let's get started. This video today is about choosing to live an what is it called? A non-conventional lifestyle. So I think back, I was just sitting there thinking this morning, like kind of like doing a track record about how I've chosen to live my life and how I've chosen to raise my daughters and like what has been the driving force behind most of what we've been able to do, the things I've been able to take care of, and the lifestyle I was always able to provide. And I think it has to be these are, and this is it's so interesting because it's like conventionality is very much so praised in our society. And so when you step outside of that realm, um, it gets a little bit sticky, especially if you have children, because people would assume that if you give your lifestyle more order and you did things that were more structured in a sense, that you would have better results, right? But I guess maybe my early teachings and understandings of people living a conventional lifestyle that was not necessarily providing the life that they wanted was working at a payday loan place when I was about 25, 24 years old. And I would see these people who were all like nurses and like physician assistants. I mean, all kinds of what we would call in this world good jobs or good careers. And yet they still, whether they were making $3,000 or $6,000 a month, and this was years ago, so that was still some good money. Whether they were making that amount, they still were falling short every week. And I'm just like, how is that possible? Like, what type of lifestyle are people living to where there's so many expenses that outweigh them to an extent that they have to come into a payday loan place, right? So it was never crashing on it because I was always, I don't judge people in those kind of, you know, everybody needs some help with something at some point. It wasn't that point, but it was a good moment to be an observer of unconventional lifestyles and seeing the dark side of it, right? The dark side of it meaning that you're so stuck into a structure of doing this thing that the minute you are not in this structure, you have no other sources of income. You have no other ways of functioning but to just think like, okay, I have to get another job, that kind of mindset, right? Um, I was never able to be that way. I just was never that kind of person. And it's never been a negative aspect to me. I've always fiddled a little over here, there, and everywhere. But something that was consistent always was me working, getting some form of education because I always enjoyed being a student. It was just something that I love to do. So like, if you look at a whole decade, I look from like my 20s all the way to my 30s, I might've had about 10 jobs maybe. So, and I used to tell students that when I would teach classes, and I would like, guess how many jobs I've had. And I used to say it so that they know, even this person that's standing in front of them as a professor had like 20 something jobs by the time I was 35, 34 years old, literally. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I enjoyed it. I was like a security guard at one time. I was fast food manager when I was much younger. I worked in clothing stores, high end, low end. I worked in department stores. I worked in shoe stores. I mean, I was a bartender for a few weeks. When people would present me with a new idea, something interesting, I never thought about creating a long-term structure around how it had to happen. I was like, sure, I'll try that, because to me, that was always the essence of life. It was always about, let me try this over here. Let me see this over there. And so when you have children in those types of mindsets, it gets a little tricky because children need things, of course, and they can't provide anything. Like, they don't create an income, right? And especially if you're not in a situation where you're receiving something like child support regularly, they're really not creating an income for you. So, I mean, and unless you're a person that does Section 8 or, government services, but I was never consistent enough to even do the paperwork to get all that stuff done. I was like, how long you got to wait for a house? I'm not going to be in Section 8. Then everything that I saw that was available in those environments were not something that I wanted to live in. So it was a lot of doing it my way, right? And what people don't share about that, like they don't share often, I feel like, the lump sum mindset, right? So I came from a mindset of a mother who was always, if I had a lump sum of money, well, she would get lump sums all the time. But nothing after that was a part of the conversation. Like, how do we manage this lump sum to take us from January all the way until July of the year when the next lump sum will show up, right? And I saw the problem in the bohemian approach to life and finances too. I was just like, hey man, it's fine to get lump sums, but you have to learn how to regulate your life around receiving a lump sum of money and knowing that that is going to be how it works, right? And so I was just sharing this information with my daughters because I'm like, a lot of times parents don't share things related to money unless people grow up in an environment where they have a scarcity mindset, and the parents are always going on about how much they don't have and what they can't afford or what won't work. And, rich people are thieves, and, I'd rather be poor than, that kind of is a real scarcity mindset. But there's also a scarcity mindset that sits on the side of when people do have a conventional lifestyle and they do, receive paychecks from a job every often and all that. It's like they're very locked into what that job provides for them. And they're very locked into those scheduled payments and stuff. And I always felt in my head, it takes away from the ability to be free. Right. And I still believe that. I think it's something that you have to give up in order to do that lifestyle. And it's nothing wrong with it, but it's just a natural aspect of it because there is a dependence on the supply. And the supply is not coming from random places. So you can't even wrap your head around a random supply, right? Because it's not random for you. You work hard for it. The money shows up. You work hard. The money shows up. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I was telling them that, my daughters, because I'm just like, there's a way to manage your life like that if you're a person that needs that level of freedom. And so I look at their lifestyle from the time when I was divorced and raising them pretty much primarily by myself. I had a lot of help from family and friends, but the main source. So like from 2 to 4 years old until I look now, 14 to 12 or 14 to 15 to 13. So you're looking at a whole decade. And if I look back at that decade of my 30s, really, it was primarily my 30s. If I look back at that decade, I'm just like, wow, we lived an amazing life. It's just like, it's insane. And it's like when I pull up pictures and I look at my Google stories and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, look what I was able to provide for these girls, or what the universe or what God was providing for us without any stable incomes all that time. I mean, and it's insane. And I'm being very transparent here. When I finally sold the house that they grew up in, and it was after 10 years of owning it and stuff, after paying all the expenses, all the things that went wrong in the divorce and getting all the money cleared out, I might have walked away with about $52,000. And I put this $52,000 to work for 2 years in my life. Like, how do you do that? I'll tell you, it's much easier to do it when the kids are little, because their expectations are your expectations, right? Your energy is their energy. If you're happy and excited that day, they're happy and excited. It's very easy to manage when you got kids under 10 years old, right? And I was thinking about that. I'm like, that is some amazing management of finances. And I was like, I walked away with 52. And what people don't know is that I lived in a place where my rent was about $2,000 a month. I lived there for about 2 years. And most people around me are like, why would you go get a place that has a $2,000 a month rent? I wanted to live in a certain kind of place, and that's just who I was. And I felt like the money was going to show up, and it did over and over again. And because I didn't think about that kind of stuff, I didn't have the heaviness of what wouldn't work in my head, because I'm just not that kind of person. And I strongly believe in the power of the mind bringing towards you negative mindsets and negative attitudes about money that can weigh you down. And what I say negative is anything that opposes the idea that it will work out. You know what I mean? But in my mind, for me to manage that, it was perfectly okay with saying, okay, this is monthly rent. This is that, this is this, right? You have credit cards. How much money is on these credit cards? How much money can you extract from them if you need to? These are the things that I would line up in my head. And then when I would get to a place where I'm like, well, I haven't had an income in about 3 or 4 months, someone would call me and say, oh, you want to teach a class? We got 2 classes over here. We got 3 over there. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And so it was a combination of doing these part-time work, odd job things and using the backbone of this lump sum of money that I received from selling the home, right? And then also having these fluky things work out when it comes to um owning my vehicles and stuff like that. You know, I had an Avalon at the time, and I remember I owed about $3,000 more on it. And so I just was like, you know, I'm gonna pay off that vehicle because I'm not gonna want to think about that, and I'm just gonna pay insurance every month. So during a lot of that time, that is what it was. I thought I had this vehicle that I owned. And so when things came up like, do they want to play soccer? We got to pay the soccer fees. We got to get the soccer clothes. We got to get the soccer shoes. I didn't hesitate. I didn't hesitate because I knew that I was creating a lifestyle and experience for my children that was being supported by much more than me. It was being supported by the universe, and it was being supported by my belief system that everything was always going to work out. And you're talking about children that went on a vacation every summer. They even expected it. Like, where are we going to go this summer? What are we going to do? Where are we going to every summer, right? You know, you name it, like any little beaches that were in the area, Port Aransas. I didn't never like Galveston. I never really went to Galveston Beach. You know, living in South Texas, a lot of people say, go to Galveston. It's like, it's a good place to go sit and watch the ocean, I'll tell you that. But to me, the beach is not like nice. And, you know, San Diego, talking about putting them on planes, taking them to Destin, Florida. You know, this was every summer. I made sure that it happened. And so for these things to work out, there was a mindset that I had to relax into. And it was that everything was always going to work out. And people underestimate the power of that mindset, right? And this was at the same time still writing books, still developing the project, still paying editors to write these books, still putting these books out on these, you know, these spurts of money from different places, still being available to loan other people money or to give money away to other people, still being able to go in a restaurant and have lunch with your friends and say, I'll pick up the check. And not because you're a big timer, it's because I just want to keep giving because I feel like the universe is constantly giving to me, right? And so I say all this to say that I think people should share more often when they're living an unconventional lifestyle, like how exactly are they doing it? And a lot of people will tell you, the YouTubers you follow, the people that are in these environments, that they're doing it by faith. And a lot of people are like, oh, faith, blah, 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 because they believe faith is somewhere in the church or it's deeply in a religion, or they hear the older people in their families who went on about faith and who had a broke and busted lifestyle. When I say faith, I mean, when you don't have that gym membership, you run and walk in your neighborhood. You know, when you bringing your kids to these events and you want them to do things, you're finding out the highest quality of a soccer team, and then, you know, the most reasonable priced, right? You're having them in dance recitals. Everybody who's ever put their children in dance, you got two of them. You ever done that? You know that just the costumes alone, just the costumes alone for the recitals going to hit you around $500 and something, blah, 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 every month, right? And it also stretches you to make relationships with people everywhere you go. I was always a student at a college somewhere, and I forced myself, because I'm very introverted, to create relationships with people who would call me back and say, hey, we have this thing happening. Do you want to do this? And also being that positive beam of light and energy. The first retreat that I went on with this women's group that I've been a part of for years was about 4 years ago. It was in New Mexico, and it was a beautiful retreat in the middle of the desert. It was just amazing, right? One of the professors I had at one of the colleges I taught at and went to school there, she paid for it for me. And I was like, no, you can't do that. She says, I feel deeply led to take care of this for you. And I just want you to enjoy it. And I think you deserve it. That almost moves me to tears, because that is the magic that I'm talking about creating in life. That is the letting go of, I have to have everything perfectly, and I have to have everything together, and I have to have everything available all the time, and falling into the mindset of, I'm not doing this thing by myself. That there's a whole entire universe. There's a whole creator of this minutia that we're in that is positively affecting and pushing everything forward at any given time. And we're all taking advantage of that carpet ride to some degree. And the more deeply nested in a conventional lifestyle you are, a lot of times it's easy to forget that you are not making it go. And I think that you get so connected to faith, you get so connected to the universe, you get so connected to the humanity in other people when they see that light in you and you recognize the light in them, it's because you've had to exercise that muscle. And I don't think you can get that unless you're exercising that muscle. And the fastest and easiest way for me to exercise that muscle was to not have it in the bank account, was to not have it to rely upon, and to also not be loaded with scarcity mindset beliefs. Because you'll see a lot of people running around talking about, oh, God will do it, this will do it, but their mindset is completely bogged down in scarcity. So it is a challenge. It is a revelation. It is a revolution to be the kind of person that knows what to do with $15,000 for 5 months and still be okay. And still your children don't even know the difference. And you got to tell them afterwards, you know what? When I quit that job, I had $15,000. And every month, you know, the rent was still paid. The mortgage was still paid. The bills were still paid. This SUV that you drive that costs $120 to fill up, that never missed a beat. And it's like also knowing when to retract, right? When they were little, it was easy. It's like, you know, what do we do this weekend? I only got $50 to really hang out and like I want to do. So this is what we do. We're going to go get some pizza and some cookies from the store. We're going to bake a cake together. We're going to do some arts and crafts. We're going to invite some friends over to hang out. You get real close to other moms too, because you're making this life work. And we're going to go to Dollar Tree and let you pick out. You can pick out 5 things. They were excited about a weekend like that. It's pulling back your expectations of giving them so much when really they want more of you, you know? And all of this, and I was able to raise my own children and homeschool. Homeschool was a part of that too. I'm like, hey, what can you save by teaching your own children, teaching classes online, and having a lifestyle where you don't have to leave the house unless you really need to and have to. So like if you're on the weekend where it's just like, it's not feasible for me to fill up this gas tank, it's no big deal. You don't have school clothes to buy. You don't have all these expenses. You don't have lunches to make and all this. And it was such a beautiful thing. I will forever think about that era of my life as being one of the greatest eras so far, because it was driven like a magic carpet ride, and I would never change it. And it only moves me to emotion because you lose some of that when you get caught up in too much of conventional lifestyle. And there's a part of me that tapped into it this past few weeks, and it's a mixture of structure, and it's also a mixture of the bohemian version of me. And it's a beautiful coming together of you can do things and not be completely consumed by the environment in the mindset of it. You can do things and have a lot less financially. And the minute you latch onto that and be like, it's okay, the financial abundance keeps appearing to you. It keeps showing up. And I think it's so important to share this stuff with your children, because I told my daughters, I'm like, sometimes we don't talk about finances because it's a bad habit. But, you know, I'm like, if you ever want to know how to live that unconventional lifestyle, if you ever want to know how to make a lump sum work for you for months at a time, I was like, I'm the best person for that. And I did it with kids. And we've had so amazing. And I feel like just the time that it takes to work a job 50 hours a week and all that, we would have never had the same experiences. Just the time that it takes when you got to bring your kids to daycare and you got to pick them up in the afternoon, we wouldn't have had that. And these girls have sat in almost every college course that I've taught at nighttime. They've been in the back of the classroom. They've watched me be a professor for a decade. You know that's got to be in their psyche, showing them how great they can be. Most people don't get to experience that. And I can't stress it enough. I mean, I'm around people now who travel and they go travel around the world, but there's a deep conventional mindset that they have that's bogging them down, They go do it and they come right back to the 40 hours. And I don't think anything is wrong with that. But what I can see how expanded my mindset is in every environment that I go in, and why people want me to come work these jobs, and why they want me to present, and why they want something from me, is because I've not been in that world. I've never accepted that world as my life, and this is how it has to be. There's a part of you that has to stretch and let go, that creates an amazing aspect of who you are, that people are going to fight for. They're going to want it. They're going to beg for it. They don't even know what they're begging for, but they know that you have something. So if you're ever interested, you want to live that conventional lifestyle and everything, go for it. Because we only live this life one time. And the level of openness you have to have, and the level of freedom you have to create, to where people are just doing things for you in some instances. And you're able to walk into these environments and bring your children in there without having one bit of less than feeling. It's like, I refuse to feel less than these people because I don't have a giant bank account. Nope. They're going to go do this ballet with all the rest of these kids. Then you have people asking you questions, trying to figure out how you infiltrated the group. You're not married. You don't come from this pedigree. You drive a Toyota, so I know you're not like, loaded or anything, maybe possibly not. And they're trying to figure out why you're so free, and why you're so happy, and why your kids are so happy, and why your world is so easy and free. And you've not done one bit of, hardcore, hard work in that sense of it. You've not done any of that. But you know that you deserve it, and you know that it's available to you. And you believe the stuff that you read. You believe in the world of abundance, in the truest form of abundance that exists. You believe that you are not making it go. And you start living by it. And when you have times that dip in a rough, you don't get beat up yourself and get mad and say, oh, this lifestyle. No, you say, no, this is just a part of it. It's all good. I'm letting go on this too. And sure enough, right when you think everything is going to fall apart, in many instances, that's when the biggest blessings are about to show up right in your space. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. And keep doing that unconventional thing, because that is the real breath of life. It ain't for everybody. But for those of you who can stomach it, you will not believe the amazing things, peoples, and places that you attract. And this is not a stump on conventional lifestyles. I just didn't grow up in one very much so. And I didn't know how to create one. And I made what I knew work for me. And I love it. And I'm going to continue doing that. And even when we get conventional, we don't even know how to be conventional. I'm doing something very conventional right now, but I'm also doing something on the side that's very unconventional. I'm like, I don't know how to just be this one thing. I got to be a whole bunch of things at once, because that's just who I am. And it's beautiful. Anyway, I hope y'all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.